Ed's detailed approach and chemistry with Mike Brewer had won viewers over, making Ant's entry daunting. However, with his expertise as a mechanic and presenter, Ant quickly brought fresh energy to the show. His creative fixes, charm, and love for classic cars earned him global praise. For 3 seasons, it seemed he was the perfect fit. Then, in 2020, fans were shocked by his sudden departure. Was it drama, ego clashes, or a personal choice? The answer is more layered than expected. In this story, we uncover the real reasons behind his exit and explore what Ant is doing now. The birth of wheeler dealers buying and reselling cars can be both profitable and enjoyable for those who are passionate about them. The process isn't always straightforward, though. It can be difficult to select the right car to flip, and enthusiasts often run the risk of becoming too attached to a car that should be sold for profit. In addition, numerous potential setbacks can occur along the way, from the purchase itself to the repair stage and ultimately the sale. The British television program Wheeler Dealers follows a team as they confront these very challenges. Acquiring a car with a major mechanical issue, such as a faulty engine or transmission, can easily outweigh the potential reward. At the same time, ensuring that the hosts and crew work well together presents its own difficulties. The show's most notable figures from its inception have included Mike Brewer, Ant Anstead, and Ed China. Ed left after season 14, following disagreements with the network Velocity and the production team. The studio aimed to reduce workshop time to lower expenses, but Ed maintained that minimizing workshop detail amounted to cutting corners. Unwilling to compromise the integrity of the program, he stepped away after 13 years. Anthony Anstead, also known by his nickname Ant, was brought in as Ed China's successor. Before his involvement with Wheeler Dealers, he co-hosted For the Love of Cars alongside Philip Glenister. His experience extended well beyond television. He was a car designer and builder, a former semi-professional football player, and at one point one of the youngest armed police officers in the United Kingdom. It was obvious from the get-go that he had big shoes to fill. Ed's 13 years on the show had generated a very dedicated fan base, and they were going to judge Ant's every move. When Wheeler Dealers debuted in October 2003 on the Discovery Channel in the UK, no one could have predicted its eventual success. It was hosted by Mike Brewer, a car trader with an eye for bargains, and mechanic Ed China, known for his lanky frame and quirky brilliance. The show had a simple formula, and that was to buy a car cheaply, fix it up, and sell it for profit. It wasn't the first show to explore cars, but its angle felt refreshingly different. While Top Gear leaned heavily into entertainment, exotic cars, and stunts, Wheeler Dealers positioned itself as accessible, practical, and aspirational. Viewers didn't need deep pockets to appreciate it, and they definitely could imagine themselves tackling similar projects in their own garages. From the very beginning, the formula caught on with others. Mike's sharp negotiation skills paired perfectly with Ed's meticulous, step-by-step mechanical breakdowns. Early episodes featured cars like the Porsche 924, Ford Capri, and Mini Cooper, vehicles with broad appeal that tapped into nostalgia while showcasing attainable restoration projects. By the mid-2000s, Wheeler Dealers had gained a loyal fan base not just in the UK, but internationally. Discovery recognized its global potential and began distributing it widely, introducing audiences from the United States, Europe, and Asia to the mix of bargains and repairs. Ed China, in particular, became a fan favorite. His calm, knowledgeable approach made complex repairs seem approachable. Unlike many car shows that glossed over the technical aspects, Wheeler Dealers leaned into them. Ed wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, spending entire segments pulling apart engines, rebuilding suspensions, and explaining everything in plain language. This authenticity became the heartbeat of the show. Fans didn't just come for entertainment, they stayed to learn. The practical nature of his tutorials sets Wheeler Dealers apart, making it an educational resource as much as a piece of television. As the show grew, so too did the challenges. Expanding to international audiences meant bigger expectations, larger budgets, and more complex logistics. Shooting an episode wasn't just about finding a car and fixing it. It now required even more careful planning, scheduling, and balancing of the personalities on screen. Insiders suggest that as time went on, tensions occasionally flared between Mike Brewer and Ed China, largely due to differences in approach. Mike's focus was on deals, pacing, and the entertainment factor, while Ed was deeply committed to showing every detail of the mechanical process. The network, too, began pushing for changes. With costs rising, Velocity, which later rebranded as Motor Trend in the US, wanted to streamline the workshop segments, reducing the level of detail shown. For executives, it was about efficiency. For Ed, however, it was about integrity. This clash would end up bringing about the first major change to the show since its inception. After 13 years and 14 seasons, the unthinkable happened. Ed China announced he was leaving Wheeler Dealers. His departure shocked fans. For many, he was the soul of the show, and the thought of carrying on without him seemed impossible. In his explanation, he revealed that the production team had insisted on shortening workshop content to save money. He believed this would compromise the quality and authenticity that made the show special. Cutting corners, as he put it, wasn't an option. Instead of bowing to pressure, he chose to walk away. This created a massive void. Fans were outraged, some even threatening to boycott the show. Social media buzzed with debates, and Mike Brewer himself faced backlash from viewers. According to motoringbox.com, Mike faced harassment in his day-to-day life following Ed China's departure from the show. He explained that the fallout extended far beyond himself. In his statement, he said, "The abuse that my family and I have endured because of Ed's statements doesn't just affect me. It impacts the crew, my friends, fans, the charities I support, as well as both my employees and employers. I've been confronted and harassed in public places, on the street, in restaurants, supermarkets, and even at car shows, all because Ed chose to leave the program. His reasons have been made clear, and people can draw their own conclusions." Despite the controversy, he has continued hosting the series, determined to keep it going. At this critical time came Ant Anstead. He wasn't a stranger to television, but to many fans of Wheeler Dealers, he was an unknown character. He was born in 1979 in Hertfordshire, England, and his path to fame was anything but straightforward. Before television, he had led several careers where he once served as one of the youngest armed police officers in the UK, later transitioned into semi-professional football, and eventually followed his passion for building cars. His natural charm and mechanical skill caught the attention of producers, leading him to co-host For the Love of Cars alongside actor Philip Glenister. By the time he joined Wheeler Dealers in 2017, he had proven himself as both a presenter and a craftsman. Still, he was stepping into an unenviable position, replacing a beloved figure whose departure had left fans suspicious and skeptical. When he first appeared on Wheeler Dealers, the pressure was enormous. Not only did he need to win over viewers, but he also had to carry forward Ed China's legacy while putting his own stamp on the role. The format of the show remained similar. Mike sourced the cars, while Ant handled the repairs. This was good and all, but the tone had shifted. Ant's workshop segments often showcased more creativity and improvisation. He wasn't afraid to take on ambitious modifications or inject his personality into the process. His background as a custom car builder gave him a slightly different approach compared to Ed's meticulous style. Fans noticed the difference. Some embraced his enthusiasm and hands-on craftsmanship, while others criticized the reduced level of technical detail in his segments. For him, it was a complex balancing act, trying to stay true to himself while respecting the expectations set by years of tradition. Ant's challenges weren't limited to the garage. Behind the scenes, the shadow of Ed China loomed large. Every decision he made, every repair he attempted, was inevitably compared to his predecessor. Winning over diehard fans took time, and in some cases he never fully succeeded. Moreover, production constraints continued. The push to streamline the workshop segments remained, meaning Ant couldn't dive as deeply into repairs as Ed once had. For viewers who valued the educational element, this was a disappointment. For Ant, it was a limitation he had little control over. On top of that, he had to navigate the shifting identity of Wheeler Dealers itself. By the late 2010s, car culture was changing, with audiences increasingly drawn to faster-paced content on YouTube and social media. Keeping the show relevant meant evolving, and he was at the center of that evolution. Despite the challenges, he brought undeniable energy and a fresh perspective. His background in custom builds meant he often looked beyond standard restorations, considering creative upgrades and practical modifications. This gave the show a slightly different flavor, one that appealed to viewers who enjoyed seeing cars adapted rather than simply restored. He also connected well with Mike Brewer. Their on-screen chemistry was lighter and more playful compared to the Brewer-China dynamic. While not everyone was convinced, many fans appreciated the new chemistry. Perhaps most importantly, he helped Wheeler Dealers maintain momentum at a time when it could easily have collapsed. Losing Ed China might have spelt the end, but his presence ensured the show lived on, reaching new audiences and continuing its international success. Fan reaction to Ant's tenure was divided. Some felt he lacked the technical depth Ed had provided, while others admired his creativity and relatability. Social media often amplified the criticism, with vocal groups lamenting the changes. At the same time, Ant gained his own supporters. Many recognized the impossible position he was in and applauded his efforts to keep the spirit of the show alive. His background, personality, and visible passion for cars helped soften the resistance over time. In 2020, he suddenly announced he was leaving Wheeler Dealers, bringing an end to his chapter of the show. By then, he had begun carving out new opportunities in television, including hosting Master Mechanic and Ant Anstead's Building Cars. This was going to be the second major problem for the show, but behind the scenes, the show was actually plagued with issues the audience never really took note of. The hidden struggles of Wheeler Dealers. For over 2 decades, Wheeler Dealers captivated classic car fans with its winning formula of buying affordable projects, fixing them up, and selling them for a profit. On screen, it's all smiles, grease-stained overalls, and roaring engines. But behind the cameras, the journey hasn't always been as smooth as a freshly polished bonnet. While audiences cheered for Mike Brewer's sharp deals and Ed China's ingenious fixes, the reality of the show often carried losses, production headaches, and growing tension between entertainment and practicality. As explained before, the foundation of Wheeler Dealers rests on turning a profit, but reality often tells a harsher story. Out of the many restorations across its seasons, a surprising number ended in financial losses. For example, in Season 1, Episode 12, the team bought a 1986 Ford Capri Laser 1.6 for just £400. With a £1,000 budget, they kept repairs modest, simply repainting fenders, getting new suspension bushings, and fresh laser decals. Yet after £945 in costs, the Capri sold for £700, which was a whopping £245 loss. Viewers saw a tidy restoration, but the numbers told a different story where passion had outweighed profit. The losses grew heavier with riskier buys. A 1985 Suzuki SJ410, known in the US as the Samurai, seemed like a fun, adventurous project. It was bought for £2,000 with another £2,000 earmarked for restoration, but it ended up selling for only £500. That single car left the team £770 in the red. It became a pattern where the more unusual or nostalgic the car, the greater the financial gamble. Take the 1989 Volkswagen Transporter T3. Nostalgia alone couldn't save the bus-like van. Though purchased for only £250, the final investment reached £1,270, and it sold for just £500, resulting in a loss of another £770. For fans, it was a trip down memory lane. However, for the crew, it was a painful reminder that the market rarely shares sentimental value. Even high-end classics weren't immune to disappointment. In Season 7, the team tackled a 1987 Mercedes-Benz 190e 2.3 to 16 Cosworth, a car forever tied to Ayrton Senna's legendary Nürburgring victory. It seemed like a surefire investment involving a motorsport icon with pedigree. But after buying it for £2,700 and pouring in £885 worth of fixes, it sold for £3,500, £85 less than the restoration cost. A painful lesson that prestige didn't always equal profit. The 1989 Range Rover Series 1 Vogue SE followed the same theme. Despite investing in a roof lining, gearbox servicing, and a new tailgate, the team lost 35 pounds on the project. While that seems minor, it showed the constant pressure they were under, where even small losses eventually gnawed at the show's central promise of profit through passion. Some cars became emotional burdens. The 1999 Jaguar XK8 convertible was one such case. Bought for £6,000, with repairs that swelled to £10,075, it eventually sold for £10,000. The £75 loss was minimal, but the episode revealed something deeper. Sometimes the mechanics fell in love with the cars themselves. The XK8's gentlemanly charm tugged at their hearts, making it hard to view it as just another flip. The most infamous heartbreak came with the 1975 AMC Pacer. Purchased for £3,059, it ballooned to £8,093 in restoration costs. When sold for £4,989, it left the team nursing a staggering £3,107 loss. The Pacer was quirky, iconic, and even comedic, but it exposed the cruel reality that some cars simply aren't financially viable, no matter how much effort goes in. These financial missteps weren't just about bad luck. They reflected a deeper production struggle. The show's producers wanted a variety ranging from obscure British classics to American muscle and European exotics, all to keep viewers hooked. But not every car had a strong resale market in the UK. Some choices, like the AMC Pacer or Volkswagen Thing, were more about novelty than smart economics. Ed China himself often voiced frustrations. His meticulous engineering work sometimes clashed with the production team's push for faster, flashier turnarounds. Complex repairs had to be condensed into quick montages, leaving fans with the illusion of effortless fixes. In reality, Ed and his workshop team could spend weeks troubleshooting issues that never made it to the screen. The growing gap between storytelling and authenticity ultimately played a role in Ed's departure. Fans were shocked, but those close to the show weren't. The stress of balancing TV drama with mechanical honesty had been mounting for years. Despite the setbacks, Wheeler Dealers scored some impressive victories that kept morale afloat. The 1974 BMW 2002T became one of the biggest success stories. It was bought for £4,990 and restored for £13,813. It sold for £23,415, yielding a hefty £9,065 profit. Similarly, the 1968 Lotus Elan S4 netted £5,015 in profit after extensive upgrades, proving that meticulous work could pay off big. The 1982 DeLorean DMC-12 was another highlight. With its stainless steel panels and movie magic aura, the team spent £14,715 on restoration and sold it for £20,500, banking nearly $6,000 in profit. Episodes like these reassured viewers, and perhaps the crew themselves, that the show wasn't just smoke and mirrors. Still, the repeated financial losses weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They carried emotional consequences. Each project meant hours of labor, late nights in the workshop, and hopes pinned on the final sale. Losing money felt like a personal defeat. For Mike Brewer, the pressure was doubled, and yet he had to maintain the on-screen persona of the ever-confident Wheeler Dealer, even when the deals went south. Tensions occasionally spilt over, particularly when fan backlash grew. Viewers often criticized fake profits or questioned the real-world feasibility of certain builds. For the crew, already stretched thin, the criticism stung. They weren't just fighting mechanical battles in the garage, they were also fighting to defend their integrity in the court of public opinion. At its heart, Wheeler Dealers was always more than a financial exercise. It celebrated the love of cars, the thrill of restoration, and the joy of breathing new life into forgotten machines. Yet, the behind-the-scenes reality showed the difficulty of turning that passion into sustainable television. Producers demanded drama, fans demanded authenticity, and the cars themselves often demanded far more time and money than anyone could predict. The 1956 Citroën HY van raised this conflict. It consumed an eye-watering £19,000 in restoration costs against a £6,000 budget, eventually selling for £23,000. The £4,000 profit looked respectable on paper, but in terms of time, effort, and stress, it was one of the most draining projects in the show's history. To viewers, it was a charming French icon reborn. To the crew, it was a logistical nightmare. Basically, behind the polished edits and enthusiastic banter, Wheeler Dealers had long carried the weight of conflicting demands of profit versus passion, and this tension was just one thing Ant had to deal with. The hidden costs of the dream job, marital struggles, and the road away from Wheeler Dealers to audiences. Ant always seemed like the confident, upbeat mechanic who threw himself into every restoration. But off-camera, he was fighting private battles that were far harder to repair than any engine or gearbox. At the heart of it all were his marital problems and a personal drain that bled into every corner of his professional life and eventually played a decisive role in his departure from the show. Ant married Louise in 2005, long before international television fame was on the horizon. Together, they raised 2 children and built what appeared from the outside to be a grounded, happy home life. For years, Louise supported his work, whether it was his early days building cars or his growing profile on British TV. Sadly, cracks began to show once his career demanded more travel, more filming, and more time away from the family home.